as we try and work through those do's and don'ts, the list becomes so long, do we really even understand sometimes what we're trying to do and what we're trying not to do? And then sometimes we end up rationalizing, well, this is okay now, because even though it wasn't okay yesterday, you think of things that were maybe worse, and so you go, well, this really isn't as bad as what I once thought it was. You know what? We don't need more facts. We don't need more Greek. We don't need no more Hebrew. We don't need no understanding to really walk this life out. Those things are all great, and I'm not diminishing or saying that they're not important at all, but the thing is, they're not the most important of all. We need that life that we're looking for. We need that life that was lost in Eden, that was lost in paradise. The word Eden means paradise in the Hebrew. And he put Adam and Eve in the center. Put them right there in the middle. See, Jesus came and he appealed to people's desire, and he appeals to our desire. Why? Because he speaks to that very paradise. He speaks to the restoration of all things. He speaks to making all things new, of bringing all things back to the way that God really created it. And that's really the spark that draws us in. It isn't the understanding of everything. But when we abandon the desire to go after that, when we abandon the desire to follow after that, not in rules and regulations, but literally following after the one who loves us so much, then we no longer hear or understand what he's saying. We only hear and understand the context. Does that make sense? In that point, then we've just returned the messages back to what they had in the synagogue, where they just argued about this, and they argued about this, and they argued about all the jots and tittles, and they argued about how strict lots of them could make things. What does work really mean? Does it mean plucking one head of grain, or does it mean actually being there for a little while? See, the desire of the enemy is just to keep us wound up on one little hindrance. The desire of the enemy is just to stop us on one little thing. And you know what? If he can stop us from moving forward in one of those little areas, then all those watching us then stop moving forward, and we stop moving forward. And he doesn't really care what you do as long as you're not making an impact, as long as you're not changing the world around you, as long as you're not bringing his kingdom here to earth. The enemy could care less. He doesn't care that you're saved. He just doesn't want this to become a tsunami that travels around and destroys everything in his kingdom. See, the reality is the church today tells us to kill our desires for sanctification. They tell us you can't desire this and you can't desire that, and if you're doing that, you're prideful, and if you're doing this, you're not taking things first, and if you're good in business and you're being blessed, then you're not doing the right things because you should be giving all that away. See, there's always another rule. Jesus put it to the Pharisees this way in Luke chapter 11 and verse 46. He says, "You load the people down with rules and regulations, nearly breaking their backs, but you never even lift one finger to help." See, I don't want to be one of those people. When we were just there, you just realize how people get caught up in the despair. We were there with, one day, every day we tried to go see some things while we were there. A lot of people say, on Facebook, all we saw was all these vacationing pictures. When we were in there ministering, I didn't have time to take any pictures most of the time, because it was go, go, go. But in between, we just tried to do stuff, because you're in another land, you're in another place, you're in another time period that still is standing there. But I'll tell you, the first night, it was actually the second night we were there, we stayed right on the border of Austria and Germany, and there's a castle there, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name, but it's 1,000 meters long. It takes this whole ridge and overlooks the river into Austria. And it was completed in 1050. One of the crazy parts about it is, all except for like 3 little places are now individual houses. People have moved into the sheds, into the stables, and we're there walking through this castle, and the postman's delivering packages, ringing on the bell, having people sign for packages. But when we were there, there was probably about 8 churches between the Austrian side and the other side that were just right there, huge stone churches. And every hour, every single one of them rings the bell. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, all 8 bells ring. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they all ring twice. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they all ring 3 times. Doesn't seem to bother anybody there. It wasn't too helpful for me. Yeah. But we're talking big, big bells that ring out throughout the whole city. And I was thinking, here you have all these churches that are all right here together in a very small area. All 8 churches were probably within 8 or 10 blocks long and about 5 blocks between them, going the other direction. And you have all this going on, yet all they really have is just religion. And so this Austrian pastor, when the day we were going to go see the Silent Night Chapel in one of our breaks, he goes, can me and my wife take you there? Because he goes, I grew up right there. And he showed us his house, and it was like less than 50 yards from the Silent Night Chapel, the house he grew up in. So when he takes us there, we saw the chapel, and then you walk down the river, and you cross over a little bridge, and you're in Germany, and we went to the Catholic church on the other side, and that's the one where the big stone was wore down. And we go in, and you're just looking at the history, the paintings, and there's all these famous people that their paintings sell for unknown amounts of money, and they went in these churches and they painted over the years on the walls, and we're in there, and it's just a stone building, and the pastor and his wife are going, this place is dead, it'll never be alive, they don't have anything here. And we were just saying, well, you need to be praying for these people. There's like 500 people that go there every week. And yes, it is. Yes, it's hollow. Yes, it's just a stone building. Yes, there's not much going on. But that doesn't mean that God can't spark a fire there. But if we keep cursing that and we keep looking down upon that and we're not encouraging what is going on, you know, there's places there in Europe, churches that we went in and that we went by, that people who actually saw Jesus walk could have been in some of those places. The grandkids of people who actually saw Jesus could have been the ones that were building some of those churches. And so they have such a deep heritage, but you just see where the heritage goes. It left everything behind. When we were there, God just showed up. It wasn't that he, I guess that he wasn't already there, because he's omnipresent, but there's an outbreak going on right now in Europe. In 2011, I met a young man, Philip, in Taiwan. He was going to the Bethel School of the Supernatural, and we were roommates. And He was a skinhead in Austria, got saved, and God started speaking to him the word Bethel. And so he did what all of us do. He just got on Google and looked up the word because he didn't know what it meant. And the very first thing that came up was Bethel School. And he goes, this must be God speaking to me. I'm supposed to go there. And so he went out and earned a whole bunch of money, and he went to Bethel School. Had no idea what he was getting into. Because in Austria, all the churches are the stone building churches. And so I met him on the second year of his 3 years that he was there. And he went back the first year. He wasn't going to have money to come back. And he went back the first year, and his church let him share what happened. And all of a sudden, people in a stone church started getting healed. And then other churches heard about it, and so they invited him, and so he started going all over Austria. Well, at the end of that summer, he had enough money to pay for his next 2 years at Bethel in full, and to go on literally every trip that he wanted to go on. And through that time, we've had him at our church 5 times, and we were the first church to ever invite him to come and speak on his own. And now, since he's a German-speaking young man, he's involved with all these different things that are going on right now across all of Europe. And so he started, his family owns a huge farm that's been in the several generations. They have a big guest house, and they have a meeting room where they rent out for weddings and stuff. It holds like a little bit over 1,000 people. They have a restaurant, and just out in the farm country. And they've turned half of that into a revival center. And they're bringing in people, and they're training up pastors and leaders, and they're bringing in people. And so he had us come there to do a school of supernatural. Didn't even tell us what he wanted, didn't even tell us what was going on. And so we went there. And there were people from Poland, there were people from all over Germany, there were people from Austria, pastors and leaders and stuff that came to be equipped. And it was just an amazing, amazing time to see the hunger of people. And just, they've had a lot of very big name people come there, a lot of really big name people that normally are speaking to thousands of people that went there to this little place and speak to 100 or 200 people. And they were kind of taken back, the people were, because when we got there, we were going to the meetings that we weren't speaking at. And that just has never happened. They come and do their meetings, and then they leave, or they go back to their room or stuff. And then after the meetings, they had the whole other half set up, and they were feeding everybody after every meeting. And so we would sit and talk to people and answer their questions and pray for them. And they had never experienced that in the 3 years he's been doing this. And all of a sudden, there started to be a way bigger impact than just sharing a message or doing a training. And people just started to get changed one after another after another. And so by the time we made it to London, Philip had met with his team, and he says he has over 2 pages of miracles and healings that they've documented, but they were all in German. And so he's going to translate them and send them to us. And